It feels like within the last few years, we've been blessed with new and interesting anime stories one after another. After going through a long dry period during the 2010s, with the only real standouts being Black Clover and, I guess, My Hero, it feels like a whole army of new, inspired storytellers have been breaking into the shonen scene. Kaiju number 8, Kagurabachi, Dandadan, Jujutsu Kaisen, and Chainsaw Man, even though those two also technically started in the 2010s, but don't worry about it. It's been really cool watching an entire generation of new shonen stories form in front of my eyes. Much like how the big three inspired many of the stories coming out now and Dragon Ball before them, these mangas will undoubtedly leave lasting impacts on future mangakas who want to tell their own creative story, and I couldn't be happier. And today we're going to be talking about one of those new animes, a brand new one that came out this year. Gachiakuta is an anime, surprise surprise, that's adapting a manga that started publishing in 2022, and has some of the most interesting story ideas I've seen in a modern anime. Much like Jujutsu Kaisen and Chainsaw Man, it has the same DNA of many of the shonen tropes from stories past, and uses them to tell a completely different and much darker story. And honestly, it's fascinating in my opinion. Despite it being published under Shonen Magazine, it doesn't feel like a traditional shonen story, if that makes any sense. Sure, it has some of the tropes that you'd expect from the genre, but there's something about it that's different in a way. It's darker, grittier, dirtier in a way, which checks out given the story's themes. It's a story about class struggle, perspective, and how holding on to anger can destroy you. It's a story that I really believe in, and I want to share it all with you today and talk about why you should be paying attention to it. This is Kei Orana's Gachiakuta.
I'm coming back, and I'll kill you all! Do you hear me? You're all dead!
First things first, a quick plot synopsis. I'm going to avoid talking too much about actual story beats outside of what happens in the first, 2 episodes worth of story, because in my opinion, things like this are best experienced blind. Gachiakuta is a story about a young boy named Rudo that lives in a wandering floating city called the Sphere that has 2 distinct classes, a super ultra wealthy class and the slums. He's accused of executing his father figure and is launched off of the island and lands in a wasteland of trash very reminiscent of how Earth looks in WALL-E, actually, and honestly I wouldn't be surprised if that was a direct inspiration, since hilariously I think the 2 stories have very similar themes, and if my theories about the future of the story are correct, might have similar origins as well as to why their respective worlds end up the way they do. He lands in a very Fallout-esque world, completely ruined by trash, but discovers entire societies, cities, as well as beings that use the abundance of discarded trash to become hulking monsters, and joins an organization called the Cleaners that hunts these monsters and keeps this lower society safe. Already you can see a lot of parallels between this and a few other shonens. Personally, when I was watching this for the first time, I got a decent amount of Chainsaw Man vibes, mostly from the main character himself. But this series does do enough special things on its own that I don't think it's fair to compare the two outside of the very surface level similarities. What I like about this series right off the bat is how grungy the aesthetic is. Normally I'm one for more colorful styles, but the way this world just sucks you in is intoxicating. It's not even necessarily dark, it's just dirty. You can see this immediately in the difference between the rich and poor sections of the sphere they all live on. The city is completely polished, untouched by any dirt or pollution, and everyone is wearing bright white, no smudges or blemishes anywhere. Untouched and perfect. While the slums look like the houses were cobbled together with whatever they just had lying around. They're made of rusted metal plates, and everything around is secondhand from whatever they can scrap together from the higher societies. Every character in the slum wears dirtier and more sun-bleached versions of the outfits the higher society wears, because they probably can't afford more than 1 or 2 outfits. The themes of class are pretty openly laid out, and even though we leave that setting after the first episode, the influence never really goes away. While it hasn't been explicitly stated, at least where I'm at in the story, but it seems like the ground, which is where the majority of the story takes place, is the way it is because people like those in the sphere kept discarding more and more garbage until eventually the pollution became uninhabitable, and an elite few were able to escape through the sphere, throwing out the world they left behind like all the trash that got them to where they are in the first place. The ground is a wasteland of trash piled up so much that they can create mountains, and some areas need gas masks to navigate without polluting your lungs. The ones in power threw the world away, and the ones beneath have to suffer for their greed. This mindset of the upper class directly counters the mindset of the main character Rudo, who is everything that the upper class looks down upon. He's dirty, he smells, his hobbies involve rummaging through and fixing up discarded items. The first we see from him is stealing a bunch of trash from the upper class and repairing them. He stitches up a stuffed rabbit that was ripped and then subsequently discarded by a little girl and gives it to the girl that he likes as a gift. He values discarded items greatly because he himself was discarded. His father was deemed a criminal because he murdered someone and was sentenced to death, leaving Ruto alone. I thought I got sidetracked there at the end, but I will be coming back to Ruto here in a bit. But for now, I'm going to move on to another aspect of the series that I think is really worth talking about: the magic system. Everyone knows that any good battle shonen isn't complete without a magic system. Magic systems are some of my favorite parts of shonen and just fantasy stories in general, because the good writers of this genre know how to make stuff that stands out, and it's stuff like this that helps your story stick in the minds of viewers. I think one of the signs of a really good power/magic system is that it allows fights to happen that could only happen in the series that it was made for on a mechanical level. The system functions on such a unique level and allows such unique fights tailored specifically to the strengths of the magic system that the writer created that it would be impossible for anyone else to create something similar without just ripping off the entire concept. You see this in some of the best shonens out there: Alchemy in Fullmetal Alchemist, Nen in Hunter x Hunter, and Cursed Energy in Jujutsu Kaisen. And I think Gachiakuta does a really good job of creating a magic system that stands out among the titans that have defined this genre. The entire combat system of Gachiakuta revolves around the concept of vital instruments. Playing into the themes I talked about earlier, this gimmick revolves around a specific item that a character cares for and cherishes. They take care of it long enough, and it develops into a powerful magical artifact capable of performing incredible feats, turning once normal everyday items into powerful weapons. Everything from a stick, to a pair of scissors, a spray can, really anything. And it leads to some really creative and fun fights. The first time we see someone fighting with a vital instrument, it's this series' equivalent of Gojo slicing apart a giant trash monster with an umbrella. Look at this guy go. Peach wishes she could do it like this guy. What I like about this system that Arana created is that more so than perhaps any other shonen I've seen, each character has a power or ability that is specifically tailored towards them. Since their abilities come from a specific item that they themselves took the time and effort to care for and protect, that item becomes an extension of themselves. Their fears, their personalities, their talents, all of it is reflected in this vital instrument and the powers that it then grants them. This means that every single character with a vital instrument brings something new to any given fight scene that no other character could fill. And it basically guarantees that each interaction between any two characters has a whole new level of creativity and intrigue, and each new character that's subsequently introduced adds something new to the table. Take the main character Ruto, for example. His life was basically doomed from the start. He was discarded by his father and was abandoned by the society he lives in, and thus forms a strong attachment to other discarded objects. That insecurity manifests in his own vital instrument, the gloves that his father figure gave him. These function differently from other VIs in the series because instead of being the item with the powers itself, it gives other discarded items power. As the manga puts it himself, he allows these discarded things one last chance to shine before they crumble away completely. If any of you have seen Record of Ragnarok, it's sort of like Jack the Ripper's powers. It's a really fascinating magic system that really helps this series stand out amongst other manga both past and present. And that combined with the grungy, almost western aesthetic leads to a really fascinating atmosphere. The last thing I want to talk about is the main character himself, Ruto. I know I've been talking about him tangentially this whole time, but I want to actually dedicate a whole section to talking about specifically him for a bit. Main characters are incredibly important in fiction, because they are the viewing point for you to see this world through. Whether it be a game, book, or anime, it's incredibly important that if you're going to get any character right, it should be your protagonist. Because if your protagonist is boring, has unclear motivations, or isn't proactive or personally invested in the overall plot, the entire story can fall apart. Thankfully though, I think that Ruto is a really interesting main character that adds so much to the world around him, and makes the series that much more fascinating to talk about. While the other characters in this story are absolutely endearing and interesting in their own right, from where I'm personally at in the story, a lot of them haven't really had their backstories dived into yet, so at the time they're entertaining but unexplored. What's interesting about Ruto is that he's not a traditional shonen protagonist. While he certainly has the design and determination of one, that determination isn't from a righteous goal or a dream to achieve some great title. His main motivation for the entire series up until this point is to A, kill the guy that killed his foster dad, and B, tear down the entire sphere society that discarded him. Not just the upper class, but the slums as well. While the inhabitants of the slums were never really endeared to him, they turned on him really quickly and deemed him a demon. And to add insult to injury, the one person that did care for him outside of his foster dad, the girl that he had feelings for, and the girl that told him that he was nothing like his father, turned her back on him at his execution. She doesn't try to hear him out, she doesn't try and argue against the officials putting this whole thing on, she just falls in with everyone else and leaves him for dead. The bitterness that he had gathered in his heart now explodes to the breaking point, and he vows to get back up to the sphere and burn the whole thing down. Definitely not the kind of life goals a kid his age should be aspiring towards, but hey, can't say he's not determined. Despite his hell-bent double-layered revenge plan, Ruto still, at his core, is a good person. But the issue was that no one gave him a real chance until he joined the Cleaners. Despite him being a member of the society that put all these people down here in the first place, all the members of the Cleaners accept him as one of their own, and gives him a new, refound purpose and family, while also doing their best to help him get back home. Very similarly to Denji from Chainsaw Man, the poor kid wasn't allowed to have a normal life until he fell down, and now he has a new family to look after him, and they'll have a lot of looking after to do because, well, Ruto's kind of unhinged. The poor kid has suffered immense persecution and reprimand ever since he was a child, even more so than other members of the slums. He's deemed a freak and then a murderer. Now that he has the power to defend himself and his friends, he starts getting a bit more, well, intense. Take this scene towards the end of Season 1. This girl named Amo, who is also her own little special way of mentally unhinged, had an ability that messed with people's emotions and memories. After they defeat her, Ruto walks up to her after being freed from her spell. Now, any other shonen protagonist would forgive her or try to talk to her like a regular person. But unfortunately for her, Ruto is not a regular person. He nearly beats her to the point of death, and some of the other guys have to pull him off of her. This scene shocked me when I watched it for the first time, and it was honestly kind of unsettling. This kid is processing so much in such a short time. His emotions are a wild mess of confusion, bitterness, and anger, and he used Amo as an excuse to let some of that out. It's a dangerous path to go down, and it could lead to the kid's self-destruction. But he's lucky now, because he doesn't have to go through it alone anymore. He talks with a man named Engine, who gives him some well-needed advice, and Ruto goes up to Amo and apologizes for his actions. This right here is proper and natural character development, and I can't wait to see where that goes next. Honestly, I could make a whole video talking about just Ruto himself and why I think he's such a well-written main character, but I think I'm going to end it here. This video is meant to sell you on the series, not to be a character study. In short, Gachiakuta is a series that I think brings a much-needed breath of fresh air to a well-worn genre. It provides different perspectives and interpretations of classic shonen tropes, and does something new with them without feeling like it's subverting them just for the sake of it. The atmosphere and setting is disgustingly alluring, and there are plenty of mystery boxes placed throughout these early episodes that would make One Piece fans' mouths water. The characters are likable, their designs are all unique and fun, and the magic system offers up so many unique fights that few shonens can match. Ruto seems like he's going to develop in either two very different ways, and I'm excited to see where his story, as well as the wider narrative, goes. Currently, there's only one season out right now, but the manga has over 150 chapters to its name right now. So if anything I said today sounds interesting to you, I highly recommend giving Gachiakuta a chance, because I think this, along with other shonen stories that have debuted in the last 2 or so years, are going to be leading the charge to this next generation of shonen storytelling. A new dawn is coming, friends, and I couldn't be more excited. Thank you for watching.